is helping Big Brother track your COVID compliance. Victor, the left never lets a good crisis go to waste. You and I have talked about this before, but will people see through some of these schemes that I just laid out? And will they ultimately recoil and resist them?
I think so. I mean, every tragedy, natural or man-made, there can be some good of it. You know, the Black Plague helped end feudalism. We know that women and minorities were vital and fundamentally transform what was very good. We want to restore it and get back to it. And, you know, you and I talked last week about Hillary Clinton's tweet about we're in America first, and then showing these statistics about the number of cases. And that was kind of a macabre thing to do, and right when, you know, we had 100,000 people suffering from this disease. But more importantly, it was factually wrong, because the United States, we've got to get a grip on things. We're doing pretty well. If you look at per capita deaths per million of population, we're about not that different from Germany, which is doing the best in Europe. And so this pessimism and this desire to manipulate this crisis for an agenda that does not have popular support and would transform or reject the status quo before the virus, which was the best economy we've had in decades, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, no one picked up on this. Sorry, Victor. Victor, no one picked up on this. But what Cuomo said yesterday, it sent a chill down my spine when he said, "We're not going back to normal." It's like, what? What are you talking about? We're not going back to normal. I mean, yeah, we should wash our hands more and be more, you know, I wipe down all surfaces, I always have, but be careful, don't go to work if you're sick. But that's not what they're talking about, or is it?
Well, normal is the status quo, which was pretty good, and Mr. Governor Cuomo apparently thinks that the status quo didn't help his ideology or his party or his agenda in a way that would have changed things in November. So whether we want to be blunt or, you know, naive or whatever the reaction is, this crisis has been weaponized. And it's a tragedy, because we're going to come out of it pretty well, but there are people who feel that they have to emphasize the downside to enact an agenda that otherwise would not be enacted without this popular depression and anger. And so we all know what's going on, and yet political correctness says that we can't really identify it and condemn it, because to do so, ironically, would be to be partisan in our reaction to what is clearly a partisan manipulation of the disaster.
Yeah, well, when you have PhD scientists, biostatisticians, physics experts, Nobel laureates saying, wait a second, we have to know the denominator to understand the lethality of this disease. And every life is precious. We want to keep everybody safe, and of course, that's a given. But we also have to understand the cost of American lives on the other side of this. When they're saying this now, Victor, you gotta imagine the policymakers at some point will hear from the people who are suffering with these job losses and these businesses and say, you know, we have lives as well, and we have to somehow preserve them.
Well, Laura, I'm sitting in a state that's the 5th largest economy in the world that's completely shut down, and we've suffered less than 250 deaths, and we have about 3 million people, 3 people per million that have died. We have twice the population of New York, and we've suffered 1/10 the deaths and 1/20th the deaths on per capita basis. And so this one-size-fits-all is absolutely insane. There are individual conditions, many of which we don't know, but we do know the results. And California should be treated in a different way than New York City. And that means that we could have a graduated return to some type of normalcy, because we don't shut down the greatest economy in the United States, in California, because we have 3 people per million dying. That's just a fact of life, when we have 760 people in California dying every day. And during this crisis, we've had about 4 extra on average.
Now, Victor, we're going to be, and I loved your piece, by the way, which I posted, and everyone's got to read it. I'll send it around again tonight on Twitter.